Since the Cubitek M4 has a bottom-mounted power supply area and there is a ventilation right at the bottom, you can install your power supply with the ventilation fan facing downwards. Once it is in place, just simply screw it back and you're ready to go. Before we can install our motherboard inside the Cubitek M4, you must first put in these motherboard standoffs. The guides, depending on the size of your motherboard, is etched in the motherboard tray itself, and this Cubitek M4 supports a micro ATX, mini ITX, ATX form factors. To install an optical drive inside the Cubitek M4, take out a drive bay cover or front, and since the mounting is a toolless option, you just simply set it to the unlock position vertically and remove the toolless lock. Slide in your optical drive into the drive bay and align the mounting holes till it, if you notice, once it's aligned, simply place back your toolless lock and set it to vertical, which is the lock position. Even though there is a 3.5-inch drive bay right underneath the 5.25-inch drive base, this actually cannot be used as an external drive bay for your floppy or maybe your card readers, since the front panel is going to block that area. And what Cubitek did was actually provide a built-in 3.5-inch adapter for your 5.25-inch devices right here on the top, and they also provided a 5.25-inch to 3.5-inch external adapter, so you can install it there. But the mounting for the 3.5-inch internal area is actually for the floppy, so unfortunately you can't put in a 3.5-inch drive there and install it with the lock. You can still put in your hard drive in there, but you can't secure it completely. It's a pretty tight fit, so it should be alright. It won't move around. But that's just one thing of note, that this internal 3.5-inch drive bay is actually not used. You can't use it at all. That is why I saw in the box that they only listed that there are 5 drive bays, internal 3.5-inch drive bays, and they didn't list the 6th one as functional. So that still sounds fair from Cubitek's perspective, since they made it clear in the packaging. There are 2 drive bays for 3.5-inch drives that you can use for the Cubitek M4. One is a drive bay that faces left and right, and one is a drive bay that faces forward and backward. To use this drive bay right here on the top, you need to use these tool-free drive rails, and you basically just take your 3.5-inch hard drive and put these drive rails on each side. They're completely toolless, and slide your hard drive into place. I suggest to put the connectors facing the left side panel, since there's space here. There's about an inch of space for your cables to route through here, instead of routing it at the back, because at the back there is only about a centimeter or less than that, a few millimeters of space, so there is no space to plug in your SATA cable, especially if you don't have an angled SATA cable, and your power connector on the back. And if you want to install a 2.5-inch or SSD drives right there at the bottom, you will need to use screws and screw them into place right here underneath. And you can still install 2 3.5-inch drives, one here and another one directly below it, and a 2.5-inch drive on this caddy. And if you have a very large hard drive video card, such as the HD 6990, you can remove this caddy right here completely. And or even if you just want extra space and you don't need to install that many hard drives, and you basically just remove this air completely, and so you have more room to maneuver with the cables. And also I would suggest, actually, just if you don't need it, to remove it, since I'm just going to show something. If as with most motherboards, have a I will move the case a bit so you can see that when this is installed and locked into place, there is no space in between for the SATA cables at all. If you have a 90-degree SATA cable, which is basically all motherboards, as you can see, it won't lock into place. There's still, you can't have a SATA cable behind there. So I suggest, if you don't need it, to just remove it completely and just use the bottom area for installing hard drives. Or if you have a 90-degree SATA cable, use that instead of straight cables like this one when you want to install the hard drive bay right to install a 3.5-inch drive on the bottom drive bay. It is similar to the optical drive bay installation. You basically use these tool-free locks, and if you notice, we have a non-modular power supply, and I suggest that to install your power supply last, instead of actually install your hard drive first on this bay before you install your power supply if you have a non-modular power supply like this, because as I'm going to demonstrate, it is a very tight fit, and see the angles, and the power supply itself is blocking it, and the cable. So if I have a power supply there already installed while the hard drive, while I'm trying to install a hard drive in this area, I can only install at the topmost area. So that's a suggestion if you're going to build with a Cubitek M4, to install your power supply last. And of course, to lock it in place, simply put back your hard drive lock and plug it into place. Since the workspace is limited inside the Cubitek M4, when you're installing your video card, you have to make sure to plan everything as I recommended. You should remove the 3.5-inch hard drive cages that face side to side if you're not going to use more than 3 hard drives. And also, if you take a look that when you remove that, you can actually have enough space for a dual GPU video cards, like an HD 6990. Although depending on your motherboard, for example, what I have here, it's an MSI 890 FXA GD65 motherboard, and even with the hard drive cage removed, the video card aligns right here to the internal 3.5-inch area. But the good thing is that this little 3.5-inch area we're not using is actually removable. It's instead of using rivets, Cubitek has used screws in front to hold it in place, so basically you can even remove that. So that's another convenience, since we're not going to use it anyway. So just removing it completely. And now we have enough clearance for our HD6990, and there's more area to route your cables. We won't have any more problems with installing a SATA cables here. Right in front at the bottom, and we can actually fill up our motherboard connectors. So now I am going to grab our video card and install it. Installing a video card inside the Cubitek M4 requires the use of this tool-free PCI locking area, and you just simply hold it in place and push in your video card. Now if you notice, there's a long power cable from our power supply connected to the 8-pin. Since there is no cable routing area at the back of the motherboard tray for the Cubitek M4, we had to route it in front. Now I suggest, like what I did here, is if you have let's take out the video card once again, so you can see there is a little carved area right there where you can push in the the 8-pin motherboard cable right behind that area when you're installing your video card in place. That way it is out of the way, and it doesn't block the airflow of your case, and it doesn't interfere with this area right here in the front, and there's less clutter. And just simply slide your PCI lock in place and plug in, of course, your additional power to your video card, and should be good to go. Alright, it looks like we have all our system assembled, and if you'd notice, it actually looks a bit cluttered. All our cables are in front, since there aren't any ways to route it to the back and out of the way for the components. Since we didn't install an optional 120mm fan in front for the intake, I've actually placed all the extra cables underneath the hard drive bay there, since we only installed one hard drive in this bay. Routed all the extra cables down there and then up to the front, and of course the 8-pin power that we connected when we installed the video card. We placed it on the back of the, we've hid it behind the video card. And there's actually one good thing about not having enough space at the back of the motherboard is you have space in front in this area. So that means the Cubitek M4 can support 165mm tall CPU aftermarket heatsinks. So that's good. You can use something like an Optical HD14, which is about 160mm tall, if I recall correctly, and a Cooler Master V6 GT, which is 162mm. So 165mm, that's plenty of space for us. We only have a 90mm fan in our test setup, so there's enough clearance for that. As for video cards, like I mentioned earlier, if you remove the drive bay covers, the drive bays, the 3.5 drive bays are optional in this area. You have enough room to install any video card in the market right now. And even if you don't, there's actually about a 290mm clearance. So our test video card has plenty of room to work with. And now let's look at the other side of this Cubitek M4 on behind the motherboard tray on the right side panel, so we can see what it looks like from there. On the right side of the Cubitek M4 is there aren't any clutter since there's no cables throughout here. There's actually a routing area here for your HD audio, but we've chosen to route it in the front instead, since the Cubitek M4 offers a very long front panel audio cable. We have enough room to route it around without interfering with the rest of the components, so we just left it there. And there's actually a cable routing area here for your front panel connectors, so it's convenient. Instead of routing it at the top, if there was no open area here, we would have to route it on top, and it might hit some of the other components there and will move around, so that's convenient. Then we tied it down with the rest of the SATA cables and routed it underneath, and there's actually enough space here to route your extra cables. Although what I did was I've chosen to route it underneath the hard drive bay, since we only installed one hard drive, and since there's no 120mm intake fan that we installed there. So the Cubitek M4 only has one exhaust fan at the rear, which is a 120mm exhaust fan, and there's no positive pressure, there's no intake fan anywhere to help with the cooling. So we'll see what the temperatures are like in the benchmarks, but for now let us put back the side panels and listen to what the fan noise sounds like, and also look at what the LEDs look like.